Hello, I'm going to continue to read from the Talmud Jmmanuel. Emmanuel in the house of Petrus, 21. And Emmanuel came to Petrus's house and saw his allied mother-in-law, who was bedridden and had a fever. 22. He touched her hand and held it long. Then he gave her a special herbal potion, and soon the fever abated and left her. After some time, she stood up and gave thanks to him, after which Emmanuel sat at the table and took food and drink to himself, as everything was presented to him, after which he announced the teaching of the prophets. 23. In the evening, however, they brought to him two possessed ones, drunken, intoxicated by toxic fruits, and befallen by restlessness. And he calmed the evil spirits, delusional thoughts, through his word intervening, hypnosis, in the spirit consciousness. He also gave them a herbal potion. Then they spewed, they threw up, vomited, and calmed down. Explanation. In the case of the two men, it did not concern a possession in the sense of a psychophysical illness. So therefore, the two had no convulsions. Rather, they merely suffered from delusional thoughts. That is, from delusions caused by toxic fruits, by which they were possessed by a restlessness befallen to them. The fruits which they had eaten contained narcotics, by which they were intoxicated, and in restlessness, and also had delusions. The traditionally mentioned possession is based on psychophysical forms that cause convulsions and on delusional constructions, delusional thoughts, and hallucinations, which are connected with corresponding feelings. These delusional thoughts in the sufferers were suggestively driven out or resolved by Emmanuel, namely by strongly persuading them and giving them a calming herbal potion. The healing of the possessed ones was, therefore, based on a suggestive or hypnotic persuasion and stillment in those suffering with convulsions in a pronounced psychophysical state of agitation. Through the suggestive appeal to reason and the stimulating of consciousness-based powers and their use for the self-healing of the possessed ones, as well as through a calming herbal potion, the psychophysical state of agitation of the sufferers declined and cleared up to a large extent. At the same time, the suggestive or hypnotic, consciousness-based will alone is the decisive factor to awaken the rationality in the possessed one, and to create and use the self-suggestive and self-hypnotic energies and powers, that is, to generate the self-healing powers and bring them to application. In addition, the essential knowledge and ability, as well as the essential medial power of the suggesting and hypnotizing person are necessary. And even if it is said in the present time for this case that faith can move mountains, then what is meant by this are the knowledge and the wisdom, as well as the ability by which those things which the human wants to realize, can become possible and can be realized. By this is meant the thought and feeling-based certainty, which has nothing to do with belief in a God, etc. 24. And thus he made, through long and deep speaking, suggestive influencing, and much interpretation, explanation, also a sick man who had become sunken in painful anxiety on account of his illness, healthy from his thoughts tormenting him. Suggestion or suggesting or suggestive. The fundamental term suggestion comes from the Latin suggerere, can't pronounce that, suggerere, which, besides, brings into or put in, means instill. This putting in or instilling occurs without the human being who is being suggestively worked on becoming aware of this. Thus, through suggestion, human beings can be unconsciously influenced in such a wise that they can free themselves, for example, from a possession, that is, from a psychophysical state of agitation. Human beings who are suggestively treated, that is, with whom a persuasion or instillment occurs in one wise or another, can also be influenced in their opinions and, thus, also in their behaviors, etc., so extensively that within them only the will of the suggesting person is complied with. This means that even those supposedly possessed by evil spirits or the devil, etc., who truly suffer from psychophysical states of agitation as well as from delusions, can be freed from their suffering through competently carried out suggestion or hypnosis. This does not mean, however, that this is possible in every case, and that suggestion or actual hypnosis is a universal remedy. But on the whole, these can be of great use and can have a great healing effect in multifarious cases of suffering. So it came to pass that what was said through the prophet Isaiah, would be fulfilled, who spoke, quote, "He has brought us the new teaching of knowledge and the teaching of the prophets, and has taken the human being's weakness upon himself. And he has healed the sick through the instilling, suggestive words of instruction and with herbs." On the importance of discipleship. 26. And when Emmanuel saw a crowd of people around him, he told them to row across to the other shore. 27. And a scribe walked up to him and said to him, "Master, I will follow you wherever you go." 28. Emmanuel spoke to him, quote, "Foxes live in dens, and birds of the sky in nests, but for me, there is no fixed place where I can lay my head." 29. To me, the duty, mission, task is given to teach love and knowledge, wisdom and all-embracing peace for all peoples, that they may become knowing, wage no wars, and be truly connected to one another in love. Therefore, I am moving restlessly through the lands and am announcing the teaching of the prophets without the place of a fixed home. 30. And another one of his disciples said to him, quote, "Master, permit me to go and teach my father, who has turned away from the truth of the teaching, from the teaching of truth. Or permit me to go, that I may say goodbye to my father, who has turned away from the teaching of truth, so I may leave him for the sake of the teaching, because I do not grasp after, learn my father's wrong belief, and want to live." Explanation. For sentences 27 and 28, it must be explained that the form originally written by Isa Rashid did not correspond to the record in the scroll, but rather to that of the New Testament. And another one of his disciples said to him, "Master, permit me to go and bury my father who just died." In sentence 28, however, Emmanuel said to him, "Follow me and let the dead bury the dead." This misrepresentation was obviously freely taken over by Ishad Rashid from the New Testament, without translating the actual record in the scroll. 31. But Emmanuel said to him, Go and do according to your will, but consider your father's belief, from which he must release, free himself through the truth and the teaching of the prophets. Thus, continue to follow me in the teaching and to grasp, learn, so that, if it should be in accordance with your Father's will, you may enlighten him in the truth of the teaching of the prophets. Explanation. Let the dead bury their dead has nothing to do with the actual speech of Emmanuel. Rather, it concerns a malicious falsification and calumny, as Emmanuel had never adopted such an inhumane attitude and had never conducted such an evil speech, because fundamentally, he always and without exception esteemed the venerability of the human being. So even those of the dead, to whom the last remaining possible honor and dignity should be given through a proper burial. Thank you for listening. And I hope you get something from this. And Salome.